Hi, everybody, and welcome to another installment of Ask a Witch. My name's Katrina Rasbold. I've been a practicing witch for 40 years, and for a good bit of that, I've worked as a professional witch. And I want to address these two questions. They're just, forgive me, for me, they're a lot of fun. And I think that I always appreciate when I'm asked these kinds of questions because I get to clarify and get to educate a little bit. So, our questions for today, and there's two. One is, why do witches speak in Latin for their spell work? And the other is, why do witches work naked? And that's just precious. Bless y'all's heart. So, let's start off with the obvious answer, and that is not all witches do speak Latin, and certainly not all witches work naked. So that might be what you wanted to hear, or it might be what you didn't want to hear. But either way, that's the truth. So let's talk about the Latin component. Now, of course, Latin is the foundational language for many of the other languages that exist in the world now. Latin is considered a dead language, but it certainly was a formative language. And Latin's just pretty, it just has a nice ring to it when we say things like ate, malkuth, vega bora, vega dula, lea lam. It's lovely. It rolls off the tongue. It's just got a beautiful symmetry to it that I enjoy. It also just feels spooky, it feels really gothic and archaic, and that can put a certain energy or vibe into the work that you're doing that infuses it a little bit. When we're doing spell work, we always want to layer as much power and energy onto what we're doing as we can. On the other hand, we sometimes get people that don't acclimate to foreign language very well. And so they're too busy trying to focus on whether or not they're saying the word correctly to put energy into what they're actually doing. And the fact of the matter is, it's mostly going to be ceremonial mages who are using a lot of Latin in their work, or a lot of ceremonial Wiccans will use Latin in their work, and it's really beautiful when they do. I personally don't often use Latin in my work. I speak a particular language. I like to be me when I go into a ritual or circle. I don't even have a craft name. I used to, but I just wanted to appear magically as myself. I wanted to be there in front of Goddess and everybody, just working the magic that is organic to me. And I wanted to do it as myself. So I don't have an alternate personality that I step into. I used to honestly get a little bit frustrated when I'd go to some of my Wiccan circles and stuff, and all of a sudden, people around me have a British accent when this guy Jerry over here burns copies at Kinko's for a living, and that girl Janice over there works in the butcher shop at Rayleigh's. So all of a sudden they got these British accents going on because that's what makes them feel magical. Well, it just made me feel weird because all of a sudden there's somebody else in circle, and I got to call them Lady Morningstar and Lord Deerhoofs and things like that. And that's great. I will honor whatever somebody wants to be called, but I do magic as me. So when you're in my circle, you're looking at Katrina, not Lady Katrina, and not High Priestess. It's just me. And so I speak my language. I speak, I guess you'd say, the Queen's English. But I don't fault anybody that does feel good about speaking Latin. So, speaking Latin as a witch, as a Wiccan, as a mage, or a practitioner is completely individual choice, and it's got to do with how magical it makes you feel and whether or not it fits into the construct of who you want to be magically. Now, the big thing about it is you don't do it to be pretentious, and you don't do it to be arrogant, and you don't do it to be show offy. Now, we like to have a little drama and a little pageantry with our rituals and stuff, but you don't do it just to show what a big ass empowered Wizard of Oz you are. You do it because it has some magical impact for you and somehow fuels what you're doing from an energetic perspective. And you know what? It's almost the same thing with working naked. And that's called skyclad when you work in the nude. And the history is that supposedly witches worked skyclad to remove any classism. Because when you're naked, you're not wearing your fancy clothes, you're not wearing your scruffy clothes, you're just a person. And there's something to be admired about that sort of equalization that happens. But here's what I'm going to tell you. A lot of the rumors and the origin of the idea of working skyclad came out of Europe. And guess what? I lived in Europe for 3 years and it's cold. And so a lot of witches aren't into working in the nude because it's damn cold. And so they're not out there on the moors in February in, you know, I don't know, Somerset or somewhere, it naked working because it's cold. Some people aren't comfortable working skyclad. I personally, I don't. And it's cause I don't care to see some of the people I work with naked. It's not that they're not beautiful people, but it's distracting to me to uh to see Jerry from Kinko standing there naked in front of me. So it's not my preference, but I know people that love it and are good at it, and that's great for them. So everybody has to find their happy place. Another thing about working naked, in addition to it being a great equalizer, is you don't have to worry about your clothes catching on fire when you walk past a candle. It's happened to me. Sure did. Started to smoke a little bit. So the answer to why do we work naked and why do we speak Latin is not all of us do. Some of us do, some of us don't. It's all got to do with what makes us happy as witches and practitioners. So that's my answer for that. And it means no disparaging affluence onto anybody who does love to do it. Some do, and God bless you, enjoy it. But it's not my thing necessarily, and doesn't have to be your thing either. So don't feel like that if you have a calling to witchcraft or you have a calling to Wicca and you want to check it out, you're necessarily going to be confronted with 13 naked people speaking Latin. It's not always going to happen, but it's always a good question to ask before you go to a circle you don't know. To say, I'm just curious, do you work skyclad or do you work clothed? It's a perfectly reasonable question and it saves you from having some surprises. Either way, if you're all revved up thinking you're going to see some naked people and you don't, you might be let down a little bit. So it's always good to ask the important questions. So y'all take care. And that's what I got for you on those two questions. Bye bye.